Impairment of assets, IS36, is one standard which is highly examinable. But take note that this standard does not apply to the following assets. It does not apply to inventory. It does not apply to deferred. I'm not sure if these points are included in your notes, but check. If they're not included, please jot them down. We said it does not apply to inventory. It does not apply to deferred tax assets. It does not apply to employment benefit assets. It does not apply to financial assets. It does not apply to investment property held under the fair value model. Take note again there, investment property held under fair value model. It does not apply to biological assets held at fair value less cost to sell. Neither does it apply to non-current assets held for sale.
Biological assets
held at fair value less cost to sell. Neither does it apply on non-current assets held for sale. So what is this impairment? Impairment is when the carrying amount of an asset.
neither does it apply
To non-current assets held for sale.
to inventory, inherent access, investment property, biological assets.
Impairment is when an asset's carrying amount is higher than its recoverable amount. Then an asset is impaired. Okay? We know what carrying amount of an asset is. We've made this before, being the cost minus depreciation or amortization. What of recoverable amount? What is it? Recoverable amount is the higher of fair value less cost of disposal and value in use. So you're going to do these two computations of fair value less cost of disposal and value in use. The one which is higher becomes the recoverable amount. That's the one you use to compare against the carrying amount. What is fair value less cost of disposal? Fair value less cost of disposal is the price that will be received to sell the asset in an ordinary transaction between market participants at the measurement date, less the direct incremental costs attributable to the disposal of the asset. Again, you should be able to recite what is fair value, or write something close in meaning as close as that. Value in use is the cash flow projections based on the most recent management approved budgets or forecasts. They should cover a maximum period of 5 years unless a longer period can be justified.
Why do you use the cash flow projections based on recent
Management approved budgets or forecasts. Most exam questions usually will give you a 3-year period cash flow projections. These cash flow projections, you have to discount them to the present. Then you sum them up. That gives you the value in use. Okay? The cash flows, they should include projections of cash inflows from continuing use of the asset. So this asset is supposed to be used on a continuing basis. Then the cash flows generated by this asset is what we use. Second, projections of cash outflows necessarily incurred to generate the cash inflows from continuing use of the asset. So, this asset, which we are saying it is generating cash inflows, if it's also got cash outflows which are incurred for it to generate the cash inflows, these cash outflows, they should also be included. Okay? So then you're going to have inflows and outflows that you net.
So if you have the outflows and you first net them, that's when you discount or you discount separate, then
it doesn't matter whichever method you use, as long as if the cash flows are in year one, the both outflows and inflows are in year one, you net them off and discount, or if you don't net them off and discount, you still get the same answer. Yes. As long as they're in the same period. It should also include net cash flows, if any, for the disposal of the assets at the end of its useful life. If this asset is going to be sold at the end of its useful life, those cash flows, disposal proceeds should also be included. Lastly, it should also include further overheads that can be directly attributed or allocated on a reasonable basis, on a reasonable and consistent basis. So any overheads which are attributable to this particular asset should also be included. Okay? To come up, those are the cash flows that you need to compute value in use. The following should be excluded from computing value in use. Okay? The first one is cash outflows relating to obligations already recognized as liabilities. This is done to avoid double counting. The second one, cash outflows relating to obligations already recognized as liabilities.
cash outflows relating
To obligations already recognized as liabilities. The second to be excluded are the effects of any future restructuring to which the entity is not yet committed. The effects of any future restructuring to which the entity is not yet committed.